let's talk about color and paint. Mike and I like to have a couple of different color themes going in our graveyard. We like some brown stones along with some gray stones. And these are mottled colors, so there's more than one gray and more than one brown. So you're going to need a base coat. You're going to need a couple of different top coat colors. You're going to need a few different moss colors. As you can see, that's a lot of paint. So what we do, in order to keep from going broke every Halloween, is to go to our local hazardous waste disposal center. They take paints that people bring in, paint that they can't throw away. They open it up. If it's any good, they'll put it back on a shelf so people can come and take what they want. You can also find cheap or free paint at a paint store where they will have mixed up the wrong color. This is a wide variety of sheens and types, and I don't think it really matters. You could go with an exterior or interior. You could go with a semi-gloss or a flat. We're going to mix them up so much you're not going to be able to tell. And for the base coat, we've chosen to use this sort of medium cocoa brown. The whole purpose of the base coat is just to cover up the pink of the styrofoam. This happens to be an exterior latex paint with a flat sheen. If all you can get is interior paint, go ahead and use that, because I think it'll hold up long enough that your Halloween decorations will be on. You can brush this on or roll it on. We have a lot of tombstones to do, so we're going to spray it.
Alright, we've let our base coat dry for about 12 hours in the garage overnight, and we're ready now to continue to the next step. But one thing we may have forgotten to mention to you is that if you're adding any of these kinds of little plastic devices to the tombstones, your base coat won't stick to the plastic. You're going to need this, a special paint that allows your base coat to stick. Use this as a primer and spray your little plastic icons. Then when you go to do the base coat, paint will stick to everything. Alright, now we're going to fill in all of our letters and our cracks and our crevices and anything else that we want to look shadowy or stand out once we roll the lighter tombstone color over the top of it with this good old black. So you continue to dab your black in here until you get all of that pink down in there eliminated. Deeper that these letters were cut, the more you've got to dab in there. And then the next step is to wipe off the excess, because the technique that we're going to use to paint later, you can only do in one coat. And you don't want any of this black showing through. So you only want it down in the crevices. It also gives you a chance to get some of this excess drip. You can see I'm kind of oozing out of the bottom of these letters a little bit. Get all your excess drip and make sure that the flat surface of the stone has as little black on it as possible. And then when we roll over it, it's just going to be a nice deep black outline.
Well, Mike has finished putting on the black on all of the crevices and the lettering, but we got some rain, so we've been chased into the garage to finish the painting of the tombstones. Before we do any painting, though, we've got to think about how are these stones going to be put into the ground? What are we going to use to keep them upright? What we have done for our previous tombstones is to drill some holes in the bottom of the tombstones, and then we take 3/4 inch PVC, we pound it into the ground so that these will provide a stand for the tombstones. So the reason we do this now is that, you know, when you're dealing with the drill, you can make a mistake and accidentally come through the front of the tombstone. This will allow us, if we make any mistakes, we'll still be able to paint over it and hide it. So let's get started. So I'm going to do this with the tombstone kind of resting lightly on the ground. You want to make sure that the stone is absolutely square, because your drill bit's going to go straight down. Again, you don't want it, coming out at an angle and protruding through your tombstone. So go real easy. This is, by the way, I believe they call this a spade bit or a shovel bit, but it's a one. It will carve a 7/8 inch hole, which is just right for a 3/4 inch PVC pipe. So here we go. There's the first hole. Do the second. These, by the way, these holes are drilled about 10 to 12 inches apart for most of the medium tombstones. Now, it probably appeared that I just randomly chose where to drill those two holes, but I had actually earlier marked exactly 12 inches on center. What we learned from doing the graveyard a few years ago is that without standardized distance, we couldn't move the tombstones from one place to another. If you just leave them there all the time, it's not a big deal, but because I didn't have a fence in my front yard, I would actually bring these in every night and put them out again every morning. So it was a little bit of a hassle to figure out which tombstone went on which set of PVC pipes. Just a little thing that might make life easier if you standardize the distance of those holes. So we're going to do half our tombstones in a gray color and the other half in a light kind of sandstone color. We're going to use two different tones so that we can blend them and get kind of a mottled effect. We're going to apply the paint with a sponge roller. Now I've taken this sponge roller and I've sawed it in half. And I'm going to use one half for one tone, the other half for the other tone. You can do this with two different rollers. You know, just use a half on one roller, half on the other. But I happen to have a split roller that makes this really simple to use with a split tray. Now what we want to do next is to apply just enough paint to the roller that you can start getting some tone on. But what we don't want to do is overload the roller, because we want to make sure we don't get drips down into these letters that we've filled with black. So here we go. The more these two colors are going to blend. If that's the effect you want, that's great. If you want more of a mottled effect, you make sure you don't over-roll it. Now we have the two tones of gray on our Tidy Bowl Man tombstone. And it's time to add the finishing touch, which is moss. We're going to use a number of different shades of moss. Anywhere from an olive green up to a seafoam green, kind of a greenish brown in between. What mossing does is really adds that last little finish of aging. Really makes it look like these tombstones have been sitting there for ages. It also will cover up a multitude of sins. If you've got a little pink showing, if you've got a little ding and some pink is showing, you can patch that over with moss and it'll be perfectly fine. I'm also going to highlight the antiquing in here by rubbing some moss in, some of the dark green color, and then wiping it off so that it sticks in these little cracks. So let's go. Oh, I'm using an airbrush that's hooked up to a compressor. We're going to spray some, and we'll also be dabbing some with a sponge. You don't have to have a compressor in order to use this cheap little airbrush. I found this at a hobby store for about 20 bucks. They also make a can of compressed air that you can hook this up to, so it can be done pretty cheaply. So, let's begin mossing. What I want to do is hit the high edges first. And I'm just going to lay down a light misting of this dark green. You see how easy it goes on. It provides a really nice contrast to that steel blue that we've got in the stone. After we get this mist on, then we're going to dab in some other colors with the sponge that will give us some dappling effect. I'm going to do the antique in here and wipe this off as long as I've got this color in the sprayer. Looks like the Tidy Bowl Man's been sunk at the bottom of the ocean. for centuries. That's better. Alright, let's keep going around the block. Here's a little spot in the crevice where the base coat is showing through, so I can just fill that up with moss and it'll disappear. Alright, let's do some sponging. I've got my different colors in a paint tray here, and everything's kind of blending in together, but that's fine. We'll use it like a painter's palette. We start with the dark green that we were using and mix it in with a lighter shade of green, and just start dabbing. You can put as much or as little of this moss on as you like. We kind of like a really heavy mossy effect. This dabbling with a sponge will give a little texture to those areas where you just sprayed, which is a little too fine and perfect. This will age it up a little bit more. It's really hard to make a mistake with this. So that's kind of the thing we're going to keep doing on all of these tombstones. And after we get this done, we let it dry. And if the weather holds, we'll be able to put them out in the yard. Otherwise, we've got to wait for the rain to pass. So keep your fingers crossed. Well, the rain lasted for about 4 days straight, and we just barely got the graveyard up in time for Halloween. So let's take a little tour. Tombstones. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment, and I'll do the best I can to help you out.